night, and I am Mama Robin or Texas Beach Mom, whichever you prefer. And normally I do a Friday Night Live. Was not able to last night, so I'm doing my Friday Night Live tonight. So welcome back, or if you've never been here before, just welcome. As I said, I am Texas Beach Mom, and my Friday Night Lives. We usually get into a case called the Lady Bird Lakes drownings, mysterious deaths, whatever you want to call them. Now, as I've talked about before on this, there's been several drownings, 18 of them, I do believe, in the last 2.5 years at Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. And they are primarily men. They are primarily men around either are college men or they're or college age. Um, so yeah, um, that's what I've been doing on Friday nights for the most part. We have gone into some detail on these. Uh, what I also where we're gonna go with. Hi, Darlene. How you doing this evening? I decided that since my camera on my laptop is still not working, that I would just do this on my phone, which I don't know why I didn't think of this last night, but for whatever reason I didn't. So here I am tonight. If you can't see me, please let me know. I do have the lights down because my head is killing me. That's where I'm at. That's what I said. My lights are down kind of low because I'm really fighting a bad migraine. But on the other hand, um, I'm here. And if you can see me, fine. We're going to leave it like this. If not, I'll get up and turn on a light. Um, I hope everybody can see me and hear me just fine. If you can't, you need to let me know because I've never done a live from my phone. So I can only assume that it's working. Um, anyhow, so we've been doing the Lady Bird Lake stuff. And thank you for letting me know. Um, we've been doing Lady Bird Lake, and I have mentioned before in the past, my voice was fine. Hi, Jody. My voice was fine till I started talking. Maybe I should just shut my face. But anyhow, um, I'm able to get her camera to work. Thank you. Um, I'm glad I can be seen. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this from my phone. I don't know why this didn't cross my mind, but it didn't. So here I am. Um, so when I've mentioned the Lady Bird Lake deaths in Austin, Texas, I've also talked about the smiley face murders. So what I'm going to do right now, since I do have my laptop open, is I'm going to read to you something from Wikipedia because it will help explain the smiley face murder theory, and then we will connect it to the Lady Bird Lake. Okay. The smiley face killers, or the smiley face murder theory, also known as the smiley face killings, the smiley face gang, is a advanced advanced by retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Gerard, as well as Dr. Lee Gilbertson, a criminal justice professor and gang expert at the St. Cloud University. It alleges that 45 young men found dead in bodies of water across several Midwestern American states from the late 1900s to the late 1900s, the late 1990s to the early 2010s. Did not accidentally drown, but concluded by law enforcement agencies, but were victims of multiple serial killers. The term smiley face became connected to the alleged murders when it was made public that the police had discovered graffiti depicting a smiley face near the locations where they think the killer dumped the bodies in at least a dozen of these cases. So out of 45 cases, a dozen of them have had a smiley face graffiti, or they've had like a sticker or something near the bottom. I've been doing a little bit of research on it today to kind of help get myself ready for tonight. Because, like I said, in a minute, we're going to get to how the Lady Bird Lake deaths may be connected to the smiley face. So, as we go on, the term smiley, I read that part. Okay, let's see, the term smiley face, police had discovered the graffiti. I just got done talking about that. Gannon wrote a textbook case study on the subject titled Case Studies in Drowning Forensics. The response of law enforcement investigators and other experts have been largely skeptical. Gannon and Durant's investigation. As recently as 2017, Gannon and Durant were examining evidence going back to the late 1990s, and they believed to connect the deaths of 45 college-age males whose bodies were found in 11 states. I got stuff going on in my background too, so that's the changing light. After leaving parties or bars where they had been drinking, the men, according to the former detectives, often fit a profile, being popular, athletic, and successful students, and most were white. Now, in the case of the ones in Texas, most of them are Latino or Hispanic, which would make it a little bit different, but there's still a majority of men in that age group. So we're going to work on connecting the dots here. Let's see, they all were white. Where did I leave off at? Okay, well, Gannon and Gerard have theorized the young men were all murdered either by an individual or by an organized group of killers. The term smiley face became connected to alleged murders when it was made public that Gannon and Gerard had discovered graffiti depicting a smiley face near the cases. Furthermore, Gannon and Gilbertson claimed to have found other types of graffiti symbols associated with suspicious deaths, but have not disseminated these other images outside of a few trusted law enforcement contacts for fear of inspiring copycat graffiti or alerting suspects. I don't know if we really need to go on with it. Wait a minute. Yeah, there's some information I didn't see earlier. When I looked this up earlier today, I don't know what's the matter with my brain today. The other police forces have investigated the deaths, dispute the conclusion of the case, are linked. Police departments involved do not currently view the deaths associated with smiley face present at the scenes of the serial killer activity. The La Crosse, Wisconsin Police Department, which was in charge of 8 of the investigations, concluded the deaths were accidental drownings of inebriated men. Well, if you notice, every time we talk about this, in Austin, every single one of them, or not every single one of them, most of them were believed to be inebriated men that fell into the lake. This is happening in Texas, Chicago, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I think some were in New York. And in every instance, it's a group of men. We'll say college-age men. Some have been a little older, some have been a little younger, but it's been college-aged men, usually fit, and most of these men were fit. If we remember watching that one, if you remember mentioning, we watched that one video of Gutierrez. They were talking about how he was physically fit, he played football, he was a college kid, he did this and that, other, he was well liked, so forth and so on. Well, that fits a lot of this, except for the fact that most of these have been white. I would think the main difference might be the fact that Texas is a lot of Hispanic people. I mean, there's a lot of Hispanic people in Texas, just like there would be in California or Arizona, Nevada. So those are a higher population of Hispanic people. Um, that would be my opinion as to why maybe the ones in Texas are not primarily white, why they're primarily Hispanic, because we have a lot of Hispanics in Texas. But that's just my theory on why that would make sense that way, why there still would be connected. Smiley face symbols. The Center for the Homicide Research published a research brief that attempted to significantly refute the theory. In March 2009, Lee Gilbertson, a criminal justice faculty member at St. Cloud University, voiced his support for the theory of an episode of Larry King Live, which the alleged murders are discussed. Now, in almost every single one of these, whether it's been Chicago, Texas, wherever, almost every single one of these, the local police swear up and down that there's no connection. They swear up and down that they're all, or most of them, are inebriated men that just fell into the lake. Now, in some of these cases, on the cases I've heard in other states, it's been situations where they would have had to stagger across fields and through thorn bushes and everywhere else just to fall into this lake. Just like at Lady Bird, you're going to have to stagger down several blocks of street and then a few more blocks of dirt road and then, all the way through the trees just to get to the damn lake. So I just don't see how an inebriated person is doing that and then managing to fall into the lake. Same with these others. So I feel like, it is just my opinion right now. I'm sure some of you agree or you wouldn't be doing this, but I feel like that these are connected. Whether it's the ones in Chicago, whether it's the ones in Texas, whether it's the ones in Wisconsin, no matter what state it's been in, there's groups of men anywhere from, I would say on average, from 5 to 15 men over a few year time span that are drowning in these lakes or these, I think one of them was a pond actually, but these lakes or these ponds, they're all supposed to be inebriated. They're all supposed to be, and in some cases, some of these might be inebriated or just staggering into lakes. Some of them I do believe are, but I do not believe for 30 seconds that every single one of these men are just staggering off into the lake somewhere. They're just whatever. I don't. I find, and the more states that I find that are having this problem, the more it's making me go, something else is going on here. Okay, so the Federal Bureau of Investigation issued the following statement. The FBI reviewed the information about the victims provided by 2 retired police detectives who have dubbed these incidents, these smiley face murders, and interviewed an individual who provided information to the detectives. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support the link between these tragic deaths. Okay, well, whatever, bullshit. Or any evidence of sustaining the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings. The FBI will continue to work with the local police in affected areas to provide support as requested. I know, and I was thinking that too. There's, of course, because the local police, no matter where you're at, are all saying, oh, no, these are not connected. There's been talks of networking. There's been talks of multiple killers. There's talks of one killer that's bouncing around. It doesn't make sense, though, unless they have a truck, unless they're a truck driver. It doesn't make sense for them to go to Texas, Chicago, Pennsylvania, New York, Wisconsin, Michigan. Although they do kind of head more that direction. It kind of comes down. If you come down to New York and just kind of snake your way around, it does kind of just You almost got a line that comes down to Texas. But why are they picking this specific states? Why are they picking college-aged men? In most states, they have been primarily white, and in Texas, they're primarily Hispanic, but that doesn't mean that they're not connected. Or even if you just take the Lady Bird Lake ones by themselves. Yeah, Ted Bundy went everywhere, and he had kind of like a line. He went from, he went down, what, didn't he start out? Oh, now I'm drawing a blank on where he started. He ended up in Florida. Like his last murders were, yeah, Washington, Utah, Florida. Thank you. He just kind of, he ended up in Florida because that's when he did that the university, the college girls. So the FBI is saying that he doesn't see, that they're not seeing any connection. I don't know. I'm seeing a connection, and other people are too. And a lot of these parents, no matter what city's been, I've been watching some of these interviews today. A lot of these parents are going, that doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense that my son just fell in and drowned. And if, again, as I've said before, every time we talk about this, if it's one or two or maybe even five, over a period of many years, I can see it. But 18 in 2.5 years, or 11 in 2 years, or whatever. Now, I am going to play a video for y'all tonight, or at least part of one. So my question is, and I need someone to answer me in the comments, do we want to watch a video about some of the smiley face ones, which really are no different than the ones in Austin? Or do we want to watch a video on the Kimberly Deitch, the 12-year-old Bundy's last victim, after the girls at the sorority house? Yes, I do remember that. She was 12. That was his youngest one, I do believe. Do we want to watch a video about one of the states that's also having this problem, about a different state, or do we want to watch a video about Lady Bird Lake again? I mean, I've got 2 videos pulled up. I can watch either. I'll just flip the screen around so we can watch it together. This manifest kill. I no, they're not, because they don't even think. It's 2 detectives that think there's connection to all of them, but the FBI doesn't think there's connection, and nobody else does either. So whoever this is still running around loose. His daughter is the one that was working with Gypsy Rose. Whose daughter? One of the detectives I mentioned? See, to the best of my knowledge, it's the smiley face killer's daughter. Oh. Well, see, there was different. Okay, there was. Let me backtrack. There's been 2 different smiley face killers. There's been an actual serial killer that was a smiley face killer, and that's probably who you're talking about, right? And then there's the smiley face killer's theory based on these drownings. So there's 2, which would make it more confusing. I get that, which is part of the reason I don't like using the Lady Bird Lake thing. I mean the smiley face thing, because first of all, they don't know who it is. A lot of the police don't even believe that it's, that they're connected in any way. I do. So do we want to watch a Lady Bird Lake one, or do we want to watch one from another state? Because I've got 2 pulled up. I don't care which one we do. I did find this guy. I did find this new channel, the Lord. Oh my God, I can't do anything right. Lady Bird. All right, thank you. Yeah, there's 2 smiley face, because there's an actual serial killer by the name of Smiley Face Killer, and then there's the smiley face theories for these drowning deaths. So because he may be a copy, because there is, like I said, the smiley face graffiti by some of the deaths. Out of all these deaths, there's only been Out of 45 deaths, there's only been 12 of them with a smiley face. But yeah, we'll do Ladybird then. Okay. I will just start this and I will flip the screen so we all, if it will let me. I can flip the screen when I'm making. Oh, there it is. Whew. All right. Come on. Flip. Aha. Aha. All right. Let's see if we can kind of see that sort of. I'll turn the TV. Well, I don't want to turn it off. I'll turn it way down.
Over the last couple of years, something very strange has been happening in Ladybird Lake, a dammed section of the Colorado River in Austin,
The
Texas.
Lore Lodge.
What I mean by that is that since July of 2022, at least 11 bodies have been pulled from the water. The rapidly rising body count has inspired rumors of a serial killer dubbed the Rainy Street Ripper due to the fact that many of the deceased had been on or near that street the night they disappeared. Police, on the other hand, are adamant that there is no connection between any of these deaths and that foul play is not suspected in most of these cases. So the question then is, why the persistence of the serial killer rumors? Is this a situation where the police are covering up a serial killer because they are unable to catch him? Or is this just an instance of the internet
Go
doing
show
what the
him some
internet
love if you don't already.
and creating some conspiracy
Because he's got a
theories
lot of
about
videos on the smiley
Part of the
face
reason for
killer's
the
theory.
suspicion, beyond the rather startling and above average number of bodies pulled out of the water since 2022, is another spate of deaths that took place between 2008 and 2019. While the body count didn't rise quite as rapidly during the earlier time span, certain details mirror some of the more recent cases closely enough to warrant questions from a nervous public. And speaking of a nervous public, when people get nervous, they sometimes turn to bad habits as a way to cope. And that's what our partner for today's video, Fume, is here to prevent. We've been working with Fume for a while now, and I can honestly say that the main reasons for that are that it is a good, high-quality product and a great concept. Before we talk about serial killers at all, we need to establish the facts of each case. And with Ladybird Lake, that is no small task. At least 18 bodies have been pulled from the water since 2008. And even though the post-2022 recoveries are the ones that made Ladybird Lake a household name, the earlier ones have to be considered as part of the context, and that starts with the recovery of the body of Riyad Hamad. Hamad was a 55-year-old school teacher reported missing by his family on April 14, 2008.
I believe this is the one I talked about before. I think when we get into, I think this is the one where he had his hands and his feet tied behind, like his hands were tied behind, taped behind his back, his feet were taped together, his eyes and his mouth were taped shut. And supposedly he just did all this himself and then jumped into the lake on his own. But let's continue.
2 days later, on the 16th, he was found in the lake over by the North Shore, just east of the I-35 bridge. The police and the medical examiner ruled it as a suicide, but not everybody agreed with that assessment. Hamad was found with duct tape over his eyes and mouth, and both his arms and legs bound, leading many to suspect that this was not self-inflicted at all. This was a murder. The next body to be found was that of Nazima Habibul, a 26-year-old preschool teacher at the Primrose School in nearby Lakeview, Texas. In addition to being a teacher, she also was a mother of a 2-year-old daughter and engaged to a man by the name of Marcus Taylor. An in-law of Habibul's told the Austin American-Statesman that she had left for a grocery store around 9:30 p.m. on the 29th of May, 2008. She was reported missing the next morning at 8 a.m. by her family. Her last known location was on the 11,000 block of Robert Wooding Drive in the Chapel Hill neighborhood of Austin. From what I can tell, this seems to have been her home. And she was last seen driving a dark gray 2006 Toyota Corolla headed to a grocery store on Slaughter Lane. A few days later, around 6:35 a.m., two fishermen found her body floating in the water of Ladybird Lake beneath the I-35 bridge. Reports were unclear as to whether or not her car was ever located. And unfortunately, there's really not much else to be found online about her case. The police said that foul play was not suspected, closed it, and that's it. What I did find interesting was that one article seemed to claim that her body was so badly decomposed, again after just 3 to 5 days, that they could not determine her age or sex. At least not initially. That said, I was unable to corroborate that. It only appeared in an excerpt of one article on a website, and the link to the article itself was dead because it seems to have been archived or deleted entirely. That's an issue I actually very frequently run into when I'm looking at cases in the early 2000s. You get this period of time where news was kind of moving out of print and onto the internet. So sometimes you have stuff that was never put in print and was put on the website, but when the website was redesigned years later, that article just disappeared. It's just gone. And if it's not in the Wayback Machine, it's gone for good. I mean, I'm sure there's some way that somebody a lot more tech savvy than me could bring this stuff back, but I can only do so much. In any case, it could have just been misreported that she was that badly decomposed. If she was that badly decomposed, it's a little odd, but it's also not completely impossible, I guess. It would be pretty odd. Nearly 6 years after the recovery of Habibul's body from the lake, yet another one was found on February 17, 2014, near the streets of Cesar Chavez and Lavaca. The deceased was identified as
That's
20-year-old
downtown.
Eleno Efron Valley, a student at St. Edward's University, who had been reported missing by his family 10 days earlier. The police ruled this death to be a suicide. A few months later, another body was reported by the Congress Avenue Bridge. On Tuesday, July 22, 2014, 84-year-old Ramona Hernandez de Lopez was found deceased by police and EMS. The cause of death was determined to be an accidental drowning. Not long after that, around 2:30 a.m. on October 11, 2014, fishermen discovered the body of 25-year-old Aaron David Rublik in the water near the Holiday Inn and the I-35 bridge. Rublik had been out with friends that night, and he decided to take an Uber back to his home on Rainey Street. However, for some reason, it was not clear whether it was that he routed to this location or that the Uber driver kicked him out or if he requested to get out of the car. But for some reason, Rublik got out of the Uber at the Holiday Inn. Police suggested that he had walked over to the water, fallen in, and they ruled it an accidental drowning with no suspicion of foul play. One thing I will say was a general trend with a lot of these cases is that it was never explained why foul play was ruled out, why it wasn't suspected. They just said, nope, we don't suspect foul play. And you may say, well, if the police don't suspect foul play, they probably have a reason, but I would like to remind everybody that the police did not suspect foul play in the death of Tommy Booth, and we pretty conclusively proved that Tommy Booth was murdered. The police also said that there was no foul play in the death of Todd Geib, despite the fact that, according to their narrative, he was in warm water for 21 days and didn't decompose at all. Of course, these are both Smiley Face Killers cases, and we've been talking about the Smiley Face Killer stuff at length for a while. Some people have even suggested that the Lady Bird Lake situation is related to the Smiley Face Killers hypothesis. That said, I would never make the argument that the Smiley Face Killers idea has been proven or that cases between cities are necessarily connected. We have made the argument that the La Crosse cluster seems to have been a group of connected cases, but I don't think there's enough evidence right now to suggest that this is a nationwide set of connected drownings. But the reason I bring all of that up is that in a lot of the cases we look at where people are deemed to have drowned accidentally, and maybe it's a little suspicious, people aren't sure if there was foul play or not, but the police say there wasn't, a lot of the time the police give out more information. There's a little bit more to go on. In this case, most of these deaths, all the police said was foul play not suspected, and in some of them, the media actually had to go and file Freedom of Information Act style requests to get the names of the deceased. I don't know if this is a difference between Texas law versus the laws in other states we've looked at, or if this is specifically Austin Police Department policy, but a little bit more transparency from the police about why things have been ruled as accidents and why foul play has been ruled out would probably go a long way with establishing public trust. Going back to the cases, however, the summer following the discovery of Rublik, on June 5, 2015, 22-year-old University of North Texas student Julio Santos disappeared after a night of drinking with his friends on Red River Street. Santos was headed for a career in fashion merchandising, having secured an internship with Nordstrom in Seattle. He was last seen waiting in line for a food truck, either on Red River and 6th or Red River and 7th. There's a food truck court at the corner of Red River and 7th.
Okay, he mentioned the food truck. When I was watching some of this earlier from these other states, some of these victims had also been at food trucks. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily a connection. It just, when he said something about it, it made my brain go, oh, yeah, that's right. And in these other places where people have been out drinking and hitting the bars, they've been hitting the food trucks too. So somebody mentioned it about being a possible connection. I don't think it is, but I just thought that was an interesting tidbit.
So I'm thinking he was probably there, but a lot of the reporting says Red River in 6th. But in any case, he was last seen somewhere along that block of Red River Street after leaving Barbarella around 2 a.m. Not long after he went missing, Santos's body was unfortunately found in Lady Bird Lake, just south of the Holiday Inn next to the I-35 bridge. Initially, the police did consider this disappearance to be somewhat suspicious, possibly due to Santos's non-traditional appearance. However, when they discovered that there was a lack of suspicious physical trauma to the body, they determined that it was probably an accident and that they did not suspect foul play. Family members, on the other hand, were not so sure, his sister having recently suggested that when Santos disappeared, he was actually on his way to meet somebody. She also suggested that it was possible that these men in general were being lured somewhere by someone, which, to be fair, is what we suggested might have happened in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Santos' sister also noted that there was exactly one thing missing from his body. Everything else was intact. He was only missing his belt. This, in her opinion, could suggest that somebody took it from him. And if you were to see this, where, say, we looked at all of these cases and 5 people were missing their belts and nothing else, that might be something that you consider a signature. But in this case, we don't have that. This is the only one where I was able to confirm a belt was missing. And then there was Julio's toxicology report, which, so far as anyone could tell, did not contain a screening for GHB or Rohypnol. I was only able to find one publicly available autopsy report for any of these cases. It was that of Jason Johns, and it did not appear that they screened for GHB. It was not named, but they did say that they screened for things that aren't named. It's, like I said, it's unclear. We would have to speak to the coroner to actually ask the question. 3 years later, on November 19th, 2018, a Martin Gutierrez went missing after drinking with his friends on Rainey Street. His first stop was Luster Pearl, where he had one drink before he moved on to the Alibi. However, at the Alibi, he was refused service and then left around 1:15 a.m. Bar staff at the Alibi told papers and the police that Gutierrez had just been acting strangely, but precisely what it was that he was doing was never made clear. The one somewhat odd thing captured on video was that when Martin left the bar, he didn't just walk out, he ran. And according to his brother Mitchell, he didn't just run, he frolicked. And frolicking was apparently very out of the ordinary for this man. Also out of the ordinary for Martin Gutierrez would have been having one drink and then being unservably intoxicated. In any case, he was heading south down Rainey Street and was last captured on camera at the intersection of Rainey and Holly, heading towards I-35 as he was supposedly looking for a ride. Unfortunately, on November 26th, the body of Martin Gutierrez was found in Lady Bird Lake, just behind the Berkshire Riverview apartments on East Riverside Drive. Martin Gutierrez's death was ruled an accidental drowning, but his brother Mitchell has contested that, largely due to the fact that the autopsy lists blunt force trauma to Martin's head. Because bruising requires blood flow, Mitchell suggested that whatever happened to Martin to cause the bruising must have happened while he was alive. Since nobody with Martin that night was able to recall him hurting his head, it seemed that whatever caused the bruising happened between him leaving the bar and him entering the water. To this day, some believe that Martin Gutierrez was drugged, stalked, and then murdered, while others believe that he was lured into some kind of trap. Either way, there's a lot of suspicion that foul play was in fact involved here, and the police have never really explained why they ruled it out. Exactly a year after the disappearance of Martin Gutierrez, 21-year-old Christian Pugh was reported missing on November 19th, 2019, after a night out drinking on Rainey Street with friends, where he was last seen at 1:37 a.m. According to articles from the time, Christian started his night by parking his car in...
Now, yeah, I heard about that case just very recently myself. Reason I mentioned why I stopped here at Christian Pugh is there's another content creator on here that talks about this, and he was with Christian Pugh the night that this happened, or at least he says he was. I mean, I don't know what he says in his video, and I have been trying to get a hold of him to talk to him about it, because he said he wasn't friends with Christian. He was friends with some of Christian's friends, and they all met up at a bar, and they had gone bar hopping. He said, but when Christian split up from the group to go home, he seemed perfectly fine. And apparently later on, he got drunk, was too drunk, staggered, and like blah, blah, blah. I will let this continue to play. But yeah, I stopped it here with Christian Pugh because there's a content creator on here that's talking about this because he says he was with Christian Pugh that night. So let's continue.
In a parking lot along Slaughter Lane. Articles say that he called an Uber to take him to Rainey Street, but then for some reason, he left his phone in his car when he was picked up. His last credit card charge that night was at a bar called Clive, but cameras last saw him dancing at Container Bar across the street at 137. His friends were seen on camera waiting for him outside, but ultimately they decided to leave without him. And oddly enough, Christian was never seen leaving the bar, at least not on camera. A search was launched for Christian the next day at around 10:30 p.m. when people became aware that this was definitely out of the ordinary for him. And then 60 hours after he disappeared, Christian Pugh was recovered alive but in very rough shape just south of the Congress Avenue Bridge. He was brought to the ICU at Del Seton Medical Center where he entered a coma until he was eventually healthy enough for rehabilitation. As for how Christian Pugh sustained his injuries, police suggested that he probably fell off of the bridge due to intoxication. Following Pugh's incident, it appears that things were pretty quiet for a while, and then in 2022, another body was recovered. 59-year-old Ricky Parks was found in the lake near the I-35 bridge on July 14, 2022. The only details that the police gave about Ricky Parks, and that's not exactly a unique name, it's not easy to find any old Ricky Parks in Austin, Texas, but all they told us is that he's 59. They didn't really give reasoning as to why they determined that foul play was not suspected. They just...
Ricky Parks, I might be able to get information on that one myself. My daughter's ex-fiance, his name is Gregory Parks. Gregory Parks' dad's name is Ricky. Now, I don't know if they're the same Ricky Parks. And she doesn't talk to her ex-fiance really anymore. But they still occasionally chit-chat. So I might mention it to her the next time she talks to him. So that's, and he would be about that age because he was 59 when this happened. Maybe that would be a little too old. I'm not sure. That's what I said. Or maybe I can even get a hold of her ex-fiance's mom because I still have her on my friends list on Facebook. But here we go. We'll continue that.
Just said, foul play not suspected. Found a man in the river, that's all. A few months later, 2 more bodies were recovered, the first on December 10th and then another on December 28th. The deceased in this case were Christopher Gutierrez and 56-year-old Kyle Thornton. Again, really no information about these guys was given, aside from they were found in the lake, and here are their ages. In fact, in the case of Christopher Gutierrez, I'm pretty sure they didn't even give his age. They just said it was Christopher Gutierrez. We actually, for a little while, thought that this was a mistake and that there was no Christopher Gutierrez, but from what I can tell, they just didn't give any information about the guy. Both of these cases were closed without suspicion of foul play, and nothing else was said on the matter. There was another recovery in December, that of Josue Moreno, but he was shot as he was driving along Riverside Avenue,
Right.
And his car then went over the guardrail and into a creek. I don't think that qualifies. If any of these cases are connected, his case is not one of them. A couple months later, on February 5th, 2023, Jason John was out with his friends on Rainey Street when he decided to head home around 2 a.m. Cameras show him walking south along Rainey Street for about 10 of the 18 minutes it should have taken him to walk home. John was only reported missing when it was realized that he had not been home to take care of his dog. Police ultimately located John in the lake between Rainey Street and I-35 on February 13th, 2023, working off of a tip that was given to them by a homeless man who claimed he saw John vomiting into the water, then falling in, and that he had tried to assist John, but was unable to. At autopsy, the medical examiner determined that John had a blood alcohol content of 0.21 and that the cause of death was an alcohol-related accidental drowning. However, the autopsy also records that there was partially digested food in John's stomach, and there was no reference to any sort of material that would have suggested vomiting. And in addition to that, it's unclear if John was actually tested for GHB or Rohypnol, as neither of them are listed on the report. Less than a month later, the body of 40-year-old Clifton Axtell was found floating in the lake by 1100 Riverside Drive on March 5th, 2023. His cause of death ultimately could not be determined, and nobody had actually seen him go into the water. Axtell had last been seen leaving Stubbs Barbecue on the 25th of February, and it's unclear how long he was in the water. He did have a history of depression, but just 2 days before he was last seen, he had told a doctor that he was not experiencing suicidal ideation. Police have not released a firm cause or manner of death in this case due to a lack of evidence. Within another month, there was another body, this time that of 33-year-old Jonathan Honey, who was in D.C. for a bachelor's party on March 31st, 2023. While he was drinking with friends on Rainey Street that evening, he decided he was going to go look for something to eat at a nearby food truck. The very next day, April 1st, 2023, Honey's body was found in the water just south of Rainey Street and to the west of the I-35 bridge. Police ruled his death to be an accidental drowning, and his tox screen came back clean, though once again, we don't know if they tested for GHB or Rohypnol. 15 days later, on April 15th, the body of Christopher Hayes Clark was pulled from the water just near the 2700 block of Canterbury Street, which itself is just west of the Longhorn Dam. His cause of death was once again ruled an accidental drowning. It's unclear when he went into the water or if he was ever reported missing by his long-term girlfriend. And yet again, the police simply said, no foul play suspected, but didn't explain why. And when you've got this many bodies in this short a period of time, even if you're very confident that they're not connected, it's best to give the public a reason to believe that. And it seems that the Austin police have yet to do so. Each of these cases, for the most part, all we see is foul play not suspected. At a certain point, just telling the public, hey, you have nothing to worry about, is not enough. People need reassurance, and they're not getting it. And that lack of reassurance has fed into these fears that there may be a serial
agree,
killer
Darlene.
operating. And again, we're getting there. We're going through all of this. But my point in saying this is to get it across that people are going to want answers, not just to be told what to do or how to feel. So far as I can tell, the most recent person to turn up in the lake who has also been identified was a man by the name of Moga Dogale, who was pulled from the water off Lamar Beach Metro Park on June 27, 2023. Very little was released about the incident, no age, no ethnicity, no, town of residence. All we know is that someone named Moga Dogale was recovered from the water on that date. And the police said that they're not investigating as a homicide. They didn't explain why they're not investigating as a homicide. And again, you can see why there's so much suspicion and so many rumors. People don't have any information, so all they can do is infer. And part of the reason that they're doing so much inferring is because the bodies do keep piling up, and at this point, there's several unidentified ones as well. Along with the people we've mentioned so far, there was also a female found near the First Street Bridge and a black male found near the dam. Foul play was not suspected in either case, and the police maintain that there is no reason to believe that there is a serial killer active in Austin, Texas. But for many people, as I've said, that's simply not enough. Serial killers are very rarely random. Bundy targeted young white women with brown hair, Gacy young white men with medium-length hair, and the Zodiac killer young couples in cars. So we can look at the deceased in Austin to see if any pattern emerges, and in the process of doing so, we can probably rule some people out by demographics alone. If we stick with the identified bodies, then we have about 16 potential victims. Of those 16, 14 are male and 2 are female, 3 are Middle Eastern, 1 is black, 9 are white or Hispanic, and 3 were of uncertain background. And 3 were under 25, 5 were ages 25 to 34, 1 ages 35 to 44, 3 ages 55 to 64, 1 75 to 84, and 3 unclear. While the basic demographic information certainly doesn't tell the whole story, it can tell us that if there is a serial killer, there are certain groups he's probably not targeting. For example, only 1 potential victim was over the age of 75. That was Ramona Hernandez de Lopez. Because only 1 victim
Then
can
that's
be
somebody
considered
different
elderly,
than what
it's
I've been
unlikely that
hearing.
if there is a serial killer, elderly people are part of his victim profile. If Ramona was targeted by a serial killer, then we would expect to see more old women in the victim profile. Now, while De Lopez was not the only woman, she was of vastly different age and a different race from the other one. Habibul was just 26 years old and of Middle Eastern origin. Because we only have 2 female victims and they share basically nothing in terms of demographics, then it's very unlikely that if there's a serial killer, women are part of his victim profile. While we're on the topic of age, it should be said that while Axtell was the only person in his age group, he was young looking enough that he could have passed for being in his mid-30s. For that reason, I'm not going to rule him out based on age alone. Looking at the races of potential victims, it's a lot less skewed than just if we profile by age. That said, whites and Hispanics do make up the majority of potential victims, with up to 4 being potentially black, whereas we know 3 are Middle Eastern. However, with the context we have, it's unlikely that the Middle Eastern group are actually connected to one another. The reason I say that is because we've kind of ruled out women as being part of the victim profile because they make up such a small percentage.
I don't think
and
it's women.
if we look at Hamada, it seems possible he was a political target. He was raided by the FBI not long before he disappeared and eventually turned up in the river. And if we look at the MO here, nobody else was wrapped up in duct tape with their arms and legs bound. Switching gears to look at the black group, I was only able to confirm the race of one of those individuals, and he's 20 years younger than the other two that have ages listed. The fourth, Moga Dogale, which I believe could also be an Italian name, oddly enough, his age wasn't even given. Ricky Parks and Kyle Thornton, the other two who may have been African American, they were too old. What that means is that within the Middle Eastern
Ricky
group
Parks
and
might be
within the
bad time.
possibly black group, there's really nothing connecting any of the cases. Thornton, Parks, and Hayes Clark were all found in different locations in the lake anyway, and not close together, just completely different parts. And, to be perfectly honest, there's not enough information about any of those four cases to come to any further conclusions. Based on what we have, there's nothing to connect them. There may be unrevealed details or undiscovered details that might connect these people, but it would be irresponsible for us to make speculative claims based on that. So if we take black and Middle Eastern people out of the potential victim pool, we're left with the white and Hispanic group, which, depending on who you ask, could theoretically include people of Middle Eastern descent and therefore Jason John. Essentially, if we rule out everybody who disrupts the pattern, we're left with 8 potential victims. All of them are male, all of them are between the ages of 20 and 40, and all are phenotypically generally similar, at least in that they're all relatively light-skinned men. So, with the demography established, we can start looking at other contributing factors, such as location. One thing that comes up pretty frequently with these stories is Rainey Street, where Honey, Martin Gutierrez, John, Rublik, and Pugh were all seen the nights they went missing. And while Santos is not known to have been on Rainey Street drinking the night he went missing, he was found in the river just off of Rainey Street. Conversely, while we do know that Pugh was drinking on Rainey Street, he did not show up south of Rainey Street. He turned up close to the Congress Avenue Bridge. As for those who did turn up south of Rainey Street, that was Santos, John, Gutierrez, Rublik, and Honey. So of our remaining 8 potential victims, we can place 6 of them at Rainey Street, with Axtell and Valley being the odd men out. Valley was found by the First Street Bridge, and while tragic, suicide does seem to be the most likely reason for his death. It's believed that he had been off prescribed antidepressant medication, and the bridge near which he was found is the one closest to his home. With Axtell, it's a bit harder to say, but between his age, his lack of proximity to the other potential victims, and his known mental health situation, I'm unwilling to connect him to the others. So as we narrow down the potential victim pool, they do start to seem more and more like they could be connected to one another. Still, even within this victim group, there are some things that need to be addressed. For example, Pugh was found nearly a mile upriver from the others, and in far more serious physical condition, and Santos was far more androgynous than the rest of the victims. What I mean by that is that while Santos is within the age range and the correct sex, if you look at the individual and you go beyond those basic details, Santos liked to wear his hair long, he sometimes wore more feminine styled clothing, he wore more feminine styled jewelry, whereas the other members of this group, they are more traditionally masculine. So what I mean to say is that while I wouldn't necessarily rule out foul play in the case of Tulio Santos, I wouldn't necessarily want to connect him to the others. And aside from the discrepancies in appearance between Santos versus the rest of them, there's also the fact that Santos wasn't actually drinking on Rainey Street that night. He was on Red River Street. As for Pugh, the immediate difference is that he was found near the Congress Avenue Bridge, whereas the rest of them were found down near Rainey Street and I-35. That said, while Rainey Street certainly does seem like it could be some kind of dump site, it would be very possible that somebody could be throwing the bodies off of the Congress Avenue Bridge and they just floated their way down to Rainey Street. However, that does still leave the issue of Pugh's extensive injuries, and then there's also the fact that a homeless man claims to have seen Jason John vomiting into the water before falling in. I will say I'm a little perplexed by the Jason John story due to the autopsy, because the autopsy does not suggest this man vomited right before he died, whereas the homeless guy said that he saw Jason John vomiting right before he fell into the water. It's of course possible that the homeless man very much did see Jason John throw up, then fall into the water, and that I just misunderstood the autopsy report. It's also possible that somebody could have paid the homeless guy to lie. While I'm by no means going to sit here and try to tell you that all homeless people are criminals, because that's just not the truth, when you think about the situation that a lot of homeless people are in and how desperate many of them are, you could see how somebody might be willing to look the other way in exchange for some cash. With no further information to go on, it's really hard to say what this situation is, and due to that level of uncertainty, I think it's best if we don't try to connect John to the rest of them. When it comes to the case of Christian Pugh, I think it can be explained, but it definitely gets pretty conspiratorial. It's a lot more complicated of an explanation than, they're just being dumped into the river on Rainy Street. And it should also be noted that at this point, we're down to 4 potential victims. The question, of course, being, is there anything further that connects these men to one another? And there actually kind of is. You see, the night that they went missing, Pugh needed a ride back to his car, Honey was a tourist, Gutierrez was looking for a ride, and Rublik had just been dropped off by an Uber. Now, according to the Heart Starts Pounding podcast, who seem to have drawn on a Honey Do With Y'all podcast interview with Pugh himself, Christian said that he remembers arriving at a pregame for a friend's birthday outing and nothing after that. As for why his friends left him behind at Container Bar, nobody is really sure. It could be that they were just annoyed that he wasn't coming out. It could also be that he had met a girl and they decided to let things go their way that they were going to go. There is one definite discrepancy between Christian's account and the Contemporary News Report. The Contemporary News Report said that he left his phone in his own car, whereas his version of events involves him leaving his phone in an Uber. Either way, he would have needed to ask somebody for a ride, or he would have needed to ask somebody if he could use their phone to call an Uber. As a result, he could have been abducted by somebody posing as an Uber driver, brought to the bridge, and then thrown off of it. If he had landed too close to the shore, he could have then sustained the fall-like injuries with which he was found. Essentially, if somebody were to impersonate an Uber driver, he would be able to rather easily abduct unwitting men, drive them somewhere, and then, given that they were already intoxicated, just yeet them over a bridge. So theoretically, this is one way that a serial killer could be responsible for all 4 of these deaths. If we exclude Pugh, however, we're left with 3 men who all disappeared somewhere between Rainy Street and the Holiday Inn, and were found in the water right there. These men are 25-year-old Aaron David Rublik, 25-year-old Martin Gutierrez, and 33-year-old Jonathan Honey. Of everyone, those 3 seem to be the most likely to be connected to one another, so if there is a serial killer, it seems most likely to me that those are his only 3 victims. But it needs to be considered that that's just 3 out of the 18 that we've started with. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not sold on the idea of a serial killer here. These were all men who were in their physical prime. They were between the ages of 25 and 33. Even drunk, they would have put up a fight. There aren't a ton of physical details out there about these guys, but we do have pictures of, at the very least, Martin Gutierrez and Jonathan Honey, and they're not small dudes. They're not built, but they're average sized. You're not going to be able to just kind of manhandle them easily. And the reason I point that out, that they probably would have put up a fight, is not to say that it's impossible someone could have overpowered them, but that you would...
Well, now, the reason why I disagree with this theory right here, that it's not one, is because I've done several, or not several, I've seen several, I've done a few videos on Gutierrez. His brothers talked about it a lot. Like a lot. And they talk about how he wasn't himself, how he left the bar after one drink. He left the bar frolicking and skipping and just not behaving like himself at all. So if somebody is so messed up that they're walking out of a bar frolicking and skipping and blah, 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 or whatever it was, they might not have had to been strong-armed. Like, they might not have had to been... There might not have had to have been a fight, depending on who's luring them. If it's a female working within the group and she's luring these men to parks, because the one thing I can't speak from experience as a 25-year-old man or 23, but I've dated. The one thing that I know about men is that if a pretty girl is trying to get them to go somewhere, and they're already a little bit intoxicated, most likely they're going to follow her. I mean, so while I get what he's doing, he is trying to be more responsible and he doesn't want to throw a whole bunch in out there. I still think 18 of them in a 2.5 year time frame is a bit much. A serial killer typically works within a specific group, but not necessarily and not always. Um, and again, not to mention, he might not have had to put up a fight because that's the brother that we've seen interviews with, and that's the victim. And he's talked about that many times about how he was skipping and frolicking, la la la, and outside of the bar, which is not his normal behavior. So that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily feel like he had to fight or that he had to put up a struggle. Honey over here, the guy holding that had been fishing, I don't know much about his behavior because I've not seen that much about his particular case. But this one, he's been on everything. He's been to everywhere, trying to talk to city council, police. He has been everywhere begging people to reopen his brother's case, telling everybody that'll listen to him, my brother was murdered. So I think out of 18, my number is actually a little higher. My estimate's a little higher that it's a serial that they were murdered, and my number is probably closer to maybe 10. Um, and if that's the case, that rings more true to serial killer. But let's continue.
Would expect there to be more defensive injuries on each of these men, but only Martin Gutierrez has any sort of bruising listed. Now, it could be that there are things in the autopsies of Rublik and Honey that suggest there was a fight of some kind, but if those details exist, they're not public. As for the injuries sustained by Gutierrez, it wasn't a ton. There was blunt force trauma to the head and bruising to the back of the head. If this man was
Which
drowned
suggests a
manually,
struggle.
then someone must have incapacitated him to some extent before drowning him. Otherwise, there would be much more extensive bruising. So when we consider all of the evidence that we have here, at least what is publicly available, what has been released about each of these disappearances and deaths, it's my opinion that there is not a strong enough body of evidence to suggest a serial killer is active in Austin, Texas. On the other hand, this is definitely an unusual number of bodies for Austin. I went back and I looked, tried to find newspaper articles and news website articles reading things along the lines of body pulled from Lady Bird Lake. And, every once in a while you see somebody was pulled from the lake. Sometimes they're pulled from the lake alive. You don't see spates of a dozen bodies in 2 years. If I were a resident of Austin, even if I didn't believe there to be a serial killer, I would certainly still have questions about why so many people are turning up in the lake. Because statistically, it does seem like some sort of body dumping spike is going on right now. But the police keep saying, no signs of foul play, no evidence of foul play, no suspicion of foul play. Problem I have with that is, hey, they might be completely right, but they've given nobody the information necessary to agree with them. Not every police department is as competent as the Ridley Township Police or the Michigan State Police or the entirety of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. But when I look at this, I'm not sure if I'm seeing incompetence or opacity. I don't know if this is that the government doesn't want to reveal what they know or that they just don't realize how bad a job they're doing at PR. I mean, think about it with using your local town. Say that you have a pond nearby, right? And one year, bodies just start to turn up in the pond every 3 months. And the police don't say, hey, the cause of death was this, and it's proven because of this, this, and this. They just tell you, oh, there's nothing to worry about. No suspicions, nothing to worry about. How many bodies do you think it takes before you start asking questions? I can tell you from personal experience, we actually did have a body turn up in the Schuylkill River not that long ago. I think it was a couple years back now. This is right outside of where I live. I was familiar with the man they found because of what I knew about him. I was not surprised that it was not foul play, or at least that they did not suspect foul play. But if another person turned up 3 months later, I might start to think, hey, that's a little weird. If I were to get 3 people in a year when usually we have none, I would definitely be hounding the local police department for questions. And if my local police department dug in their heels and kept saying there's no suspicion of foul play, and I asked why, and then another body turned up and they just said the same thing and wouldn't tell me why, I would actually get angry and I would start to believe they were hiding something. To give the most charitable interpretation of what the Austin police seem to be doing right now, it's basically them saying, well, we know that foul play was not involved, but there's some privacy issues. The families might not be okay with us releasing certain information. It's probably in the best interest of those directly involved. We don't give too many details, but in doing so, they're kind of convincing people that there's something being hidden. It could be that there's an extremely reasonable explanation for every single one of these people's deaths. It could be that somebody was on drugs. It could be that somebody had been expressing suicidal ideation, and that their families just said, hey, we want to keep this close to the vest. It's better for us if this is private. Well, that's totally understandable, but maybe the police should come out and say, while we won't give out any specific identifying details, 3 of these cases were ruled out because we confirmed beyond a reasonable doubt that this was a suicide. If they were to say, this guy was found with a blood alcohol content of 0.45 and near a bridge with no guardrails, okay, I'm gonna accept that was probably an accident. But when all you will say is no suspicion of foul play, and you have over a dozen bodies, people are gonna have questions, and all you do by refusing to give them more information is breed more and more conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that balancing the private wishes of the deceased person's family with the public interest in having the information necessary to understand current events is an easy task. I'm obviously not saying that's a simple thing. But at a certain point, you definitely need more than just remain calm, everyone. But hey, that's why we're here. We may not get everything right every single time, and there may be things that we missed even in this video. But the good thing is, you can always leave a comment telling us what we missed. And in future videos, when we address things again, sometimes just stuff comes up in context, because often, we'll be talking about one random thing, and it's like, oh yeah, and this guy who disappeared in this instance, cities away, had a similar set of events. Whenever that happens, if you give us a comment where you're like, hey, you forgot about John Smith, then I'll go and I'll look into John Smith and be like, oh, okay, I forgot about John Smith. And next time we talk about something that relates to this, I'll say, by the way, we found out after doing the first video that John Smith disappeared under mysterious circumstances and seems to have been connected to this. So please engage, leave comments, tell us what you think, tell us if there's things you think we could be doing better, if I pronounced something wrong, anything of the sort. We are all ears. Please help us out. And if you want to support what we're doing here at the Lore Lodge, you can subscribe to us here on YouTube or on Patreon for just $1 a month. That gets you access to exclusive content. Oh God, we have to shoot a drunk folklore this week. I'm not excited for that. Isn't this the last Saturday of the month?
No. Remember we said we were going to do it next Saturday.
Okay.
Because you have the party.
Right. And it would not be good for me to do that before the party. I thought we said we were going to do it before the party.
All right, well, as you can see, they've got the smiley face killer's theory, and they've got different states here. They got Michigan State, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then a few others go down here. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, the very bottom is the Texas one. So there's enough going on. And at first I thought I knew it was Texas. Then I found out there was some in Chicago. Then I found out there was some in New York. Now I'm finding out there's Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and a few other places. All right, so there is something definitely going on. The theory that you have, Darlene, about it being a truck driver, right now, in my mind, that makes the most sense. Because that would be the person that's traveling from New York to Texas or whatever his route is. And while he's traveling, he's doing these things. So, with that being said, I think that makes the most sense. But I honestly believe with all my heart, no matter what this guy says or other people have said, that something weird is going on. And it's going on in different states. It's not just in Texas. It's not just Chicago. It's not just New York. As I've said, it's other states. There's so many states now, and the average amount is at least 5. So you've got, and it all seems to be in a time span. That's why I believe they're connected. That's why I believe they're connected. And as I said earlier, the reason why there's a theory about smiley face theory is because at some of these, out of all these men that they've talked about, some of them had a smiley face graffiti or a smiley face sticker near the body. Like, that's a little odd. And it's not the same smiley face killer that you were saying about, which we've already discussed. But yeah, I think there's definitely something weird. I do want to continue going into these because there's so many states to cover, and I'm trying to bring recognition to it. I think recognition is the word I'm looking for. I'm trying to bring recognition to it so that, because the Austin police are just not talking about it. Like, in some of these other videos I watched today with Michigan and so forth, their police seem to be a little bit more willing to talk about it, whereas Austin is just shutting everybody down. One video that I think I'm going to go ahead and try to play. Yeah, that could be it too. Well, because I've heard of both. So and here's the thing. This is what's fucked up. There are so many serial killers out there. There's so many out there are currently that are active, and we don't hear about them all the time because they're not happening in our state or in our area. I don't remember the statistic anymore, but it was something kind of like 100 serial killers active at any given time, and I'm like, well, shit. And there was another statistic about when you will pass, like when you're walking on the streets throughout your life, you will pass X amount of people that are serial killers or that have killed somebody. And I'm like, crap, that's a lot of people. So where I'm going with this, where I intend to go with this, is this is between Texas, like I said, Colorado, Michigan, and all these other states. It's men that's coming up missing. It's not women. There's been a few in Texas, and they're probably not related. But it's men that's coming up missing. Their bodies are being found in a body of water, whether it be a lake or a pond or whatever. And it's an amount, like it's a decent amount of them over a small period of time. So there's something here. I don't know why Austin is being so hard-headed about it. I don't know why they're like, nope, 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 absolutely nothing to see here, folks. There is a video that I'm going to try to get on for next Friday, and it's a guy, just a regular dude, and he's got a microphone, and then he's got a friend with him, and they have got a camera. The guy's got a camera, and they're just stopping people on the sidewalks there in Austin on Rainy Street, in the Rainy Street area, and they're asking people, do you think there's a serial killer? And when the police found out that he was asking about it, because I talked about this before, when the police found out he was asking about it, they arrested him for jaywalking. And he wasn't jaywalking. He was on the sidewalk talking to people. He was asking questions about the Rainy Street Killer, or the Rainy Street Ripper is what they're calling it now. And the police asked him to stop talking about it. And he said, I'm just asking questions. So they arrested him. I want to find that video again. Now, as far as what's going on with my computer, anybody that checked in last night or even today, seen that my camera on my laptop just isn't working. It has done this before in the past. Usually in a day or two, it's fine. But as soon as I get my camera up and running on my laptop, I can get into my StreamYard. And once I get into my StreamYard, I can start figuring out how to upload videos in the StreamYard so I can play the clips directly from my laptop. With that being said, that was the plan for tonight, but my camera is just, it's not behaving. It's not working. There's just a little black picture. It shows a camera and a line through it. I don't know what it's doing. I don't know why it's doing it. To be honest, I probably need a new laptop, but that's going to have to wait. I got other things more important right now than a laptop. Let's just hope it doesn't die completely. I'd hate to have to try to do all this on my phone all the time. But I think that's all we're going to do for tonight, unless anybody has any questions or anything. I appreciate the people that came in. Darlene, you're always loved and welcomed here. Anybody that came in tonight, if you stuck around with the whole thing, great. Congratulations. If you didn't, I get it, because this is not necessarily the right way to do things, but it was the only thing I had for tonight. And when I tell people I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. I showed up last night, just my computer didn't. And for whatever reason, it did not cross my mind to use my phone the way I did tonight. I could have done that last night, but I didn't. So I came back tonight and here we are. But yeah, I honestly believe that there's something weird going on because it's happening in it's a bunch of different men in a bunch of different cities and they're all winding up dead in a lake. And it's been like you have to cross fields or streets or yards or whatever to get to these lakes. It's not like you're walking down the street and there's a lake and you fall into it. You're intentionally heading towards that lake. And most men, and especially in that age group, most men, especially in that age group, if they're had a couple of beers and they're feeling a little tipsy or a little loopy or their drink was spiked or whatever, and they got some girl they're going to meet down at the lake, or even a guy, I mean, if they're going to meet somebody down at the lake for a little fun time, they're going to ignore their personal well-being. They're going to ignore their little spidey senses. When their little spidey senses start tingling, saying, you don't go there, this is dangerous, they're going to ignore that. And they're going to go follow that person or go meet up with that person, especially if they think they're going to get a little fun time out of it. So, and because for one, and I'm not trying to sound negative in any way, most men don't suspect that they're going to be a victim. It's very common to assume that a woman's going to be a victim. But if you're a guy and you're out partying with your friends and you're having a few drinkies and you think you're going to hook up with some girl at a park or a lake or whatever for a little bit of fun time, and you're not going to think she's going to hurt you. You don't think she's going to hurt you. Now, women have gotten smarter about it because we know. So we're not as likely to do something stupid as to follow some guy down there. But if it's the woman doing the inviting, shit, he ain't going to think twice. So let's take, yeah, and they think that, oh, I can handle myself. Well, there ain't nobody going to hurt me. Dude, your people are dying. So hold on, let's take because I want to examine that theory about the truck driver. So the truck driver theory makes the most sense to me right now that I know how many different states it's been in. And then, like I said, there's, like you mentioned, there was Luke Bryan's there in Nashville. So that makes Tennessee another state. I'm kind of curious now to see if there's been a lot of deaths or any drowning deaths in Tennessee that we're not finding out about. So that'd be something for me to look into too. But in the meantime, let's take a truck driver. Let's say he's paying some girl, or maybe he's in partner with a girl, he's cahoots with a girl, or paying some girl to lure this guy. Like I said, if he thinks he's going to get a little fun time out of it, he's going to go ahead and go, especially if he's been drinking and he's lonely, or maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything nefarious, but as far as the guy, I mean, maybe he is cheating on his girl. Maybe he followed the hotter blonde down to the... I don't know what's going on. And couples have killed together many times. That's what I started to bring up. There are so many couples out there. Oh my God, there's a list. So it's not entirely unlikely that a truck driver and his wife, girlfriend, significant other, whatever, are going to state and they're luring these men and killing them. Maybe they're killing them for the fun. Maybe they're killing them. I mean, most of them haven't been robbed, so it would almost have to be for fun. But now that I know how many different states it is, and there's probably more states now than I realize. So, because Nashville might be a possibility. Thank you for bringing that up. Nashville might be a possibility. So like I said, thank you for bringing that up. Because of that Luke Bryan thing. I'm kind of curious now to see if anybody's been drowning in Nashville. So yeah, on Friday nights, we're going to be covering this. If you want to go to the Lore Lodge, go to his channel. show him some love. He has a whole playlist about the smiley face killer's theory where he talks about different states and stuff. Because I showed you that a minute ago when I flipped the camera around. Go to his channel, show him some love. I did send him an email about 10 minutes before I started this. Because I'm trying to get somebody that knows a little bit more about this than I do to talk to me. I want to help figure this out. I think we've got a big problem here, and I think the police are just being, maybe they're being deliberately obtuse. Shit, I don't know. I would like to also find that one I found with that guy that had the microphone and the camera. I think they did say other people had fell in the lake in Nashville. They had to put up a fence or something. See, that gives me something to look into. Is the Nashville one, because now I'm wondering if Nashville's part of it. You know, maybe they're starting this in Nashville. It makes me wonder now how many in each state. Like if this is something that's happening state to state. Now this guy that's running the Lore Lodge, he seems to be pretty on top of stuff. Which is one of the reasons why I picked his stuff. But as I said, it's not for him to say, well, I don't think it's likely because there's no sign of struggle. Well, that Martin Gutierrez, he had a knot in the back of his head. So there was apparently some struggle, and that's the one that was also acting really loopy and stuff. The one guy, Christopher Hayes, I think his name was. He was, and I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make it sound bad. I'm not laying fault. He was a homeless drug addict, so he necessarily doesn't fit the average person being attacked, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't attacked too. I mean, because there's a video showing him like being talked to by the police, like he was asleep on a bench outside of one of the little restaurants down there, and they woke him up and told him basically he couldn't be there and da 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 da. And then the next thing you know, he's gone, like he has just freaking disappeared. Christopher Hayes, I think, is that victim. But now you've got me wondering if Nashville's a possibility. So yeah, I think this is going to be our Friday night thing for a while. Like I said, and they have no info. Well, if they have info, like he said, and like I've been telling you, as far as the other cases, I don't know. But in Austin, they're giving us no information. They're telling us nothing. They're saying, nope, nothing happened. It was a drowning. With the exception of like, out of 18 cases, with the exception of like 2 or maybe 3, they're saying, nope, it was an accidental drowning. They got drunk and fell in. Austin is giving us no information. They're giving us, so I don't know anything about sexually assaulted. Oh, you know what? I don't even think it's so much. First of all, I don't get monetized anyway. So you're not hurting my monetization. If I had a bigger channel, it might hurt my monetization. But since I don't have a big enough channel to get monetized anyway, you can't really hurt me any. It's not like I'm going to lose my money. I'm not making any money yet. I have to have at least... Yeah, I know how YouTube... And I say things all the time that I probably shouldn't say. But I'm not... I have 500 subscribers before I make anything. And then it... Because... Or like... Yeah, oh, that would be great. Okay, so let's say a sticker. Well, YouTube gets 30 cents of that dollar sticker, so I only make 70 cents off, say, that dollar sticker. And I have to have 500 subscribers before I can even do that much. So I'm not even making any money at this point, so they can't demonetize me for you saying that. I ain't that worried about it yet. Now, if I start getting a bigger crowd and I start making some money, I'm going to be a little more careful, and I'm going to ask everybody to be more careful too. But right now, I don't even care. They're not paying me. They can't take money away from me because they're not giving me any. I don't have enough subscribers yet. Speaking of, I have no likes on this video. I have 4 people that have watched it tonight and not 1 like. So y'all need to like, subscribe, Um, hit the notification bell so that you know when I'm getting ready to do something stupid. All the fun stuff. Nobody has liked it yet. Y'all get busy. All 4 of you need to like it. Damn it. Anyhow, hopefully by the time, hopefully I forgot this camera problem with the laptop soon. Because after I do that, I can get StreamYard up and running. I can start figuring out how to upload videos and start doing this the right way. But for right now, I couldn't figure out how to do a live stream tonight with my laptop, so I just did it this way. I couldn't figure out anything else. I know you'll do it eventually. Nobody's done it. I'm gonna pout now for a bit. Possible. I've never had a video with no likes. Like, I would be upset. And that was even going back to my older ones where I wasn't doing this. But I'm sure everybody will hit it at least once. There we go. We got a smack on the like button. Thank you. I assume it's Darlene. I don't know. Somebody smacked it. But no, I think there's more going on out here. I got more videos I'm going to try to pull up, whether I have to do it this way or I get my camera working on my laptop and I can do it through StreamYard. Whatever I have to do, I will be pulling up videos from now on, because these people, and I've said this before when I'm talking about Chris Watts, these people are finding information I can't find. It's not that I'm not trying. Thank you. Second light got hit. I don't know, because I have seen videos where people are finding pictures that I can't find anywhere. I don't know if their research is just better than mine, which is possible, because I'm the first one to admit research is not my strong suit. But I want to start showing videos like everyone. I mean, everybody else shows clips of videos. Why can't I? Or they play whole videos and they just stop it like every so often, like I did. But you got to stop and talk about it anyway. So and that's for the, so that they can't do a copyright strike. And I've already emailed this guy, so there's a very good chance he probably wouldn't copyright strike me anyway. But he might. I mean, I don't know. He hasn't. I emailed him earlier hoping I could talk to him about the Lady Bird Lake thing. He doesn't seem to think it's a serial killer at Lady Bird Lake. He thinks these are different than the other ones. But I get theories, but I don't agree. I get where it's coming from. The looping, I think they're being. We don't know if it's a girl luring them to go party or what, or another guy, or whatever the case may be. Because I think for whoever's doing, somebody's order for somebody to do this, the be watched. Like, you have to know. Well, it could be me. I've been having problems with my. So this is so cutting out. If day and I've missed it, happy birthday or happy early birthday. If you've had an anniversary, happy anniversary. Be good to each other. Be kind to yourselves. Okay, yeah, thank you for letting me know. It's probably my internet. So I will talk to everybody later and have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Wednesday.